Marcus Thompson was a very rich man. He owned big companies, lived in a giant house, and wore the fanciest clothes. But despite all his money, Marcus felt lonely. He noticed that people only cared about him because he was rich. No one seemed to like him for who he was. They just liked his money. So, one day, Marcus decided he would leave his fancy life behind and live like a regular person. He packed a small bag, wore plain clothes, and moved to a poor neighborhood. There, he introduced himself as Marcus Brown and told no one about his true identity. When Marcus arrived, he realized life here was very different from what he was used to. The buildings were old, the roads were cracked, and the people looked tired. But they all seemed to know each other and looked out for one another. Marcus rented a small, run-down apartment, and every time he looked around, he felt a mix of excitement and fear. No one here knew he was a billionaire. For the first time, he wasn't Marcus Thompson, the rich man. He was just Marcus Brown, a regular person. He hoped to find what he was looking for: real friendships, people who didn't care about money, and maybe, just maybe, a place to belong. Marcus settled into his new life slowly, but he noticed things were not easy for his neighbors. Every day, he saw them working hard, even though they didn't have much to show for it. One of his neighbors was an old woman named Grandma Lucy, who owned a tiny grocery store down the street. Her store was old, with dusty shelves and faded signs, but it was the only place people could afford to shop. One evening, Marcus walked into her store and introduced himself, offering to help her carry some boxes. Grandma Lucy looked surprised but smiled and said, "It's rare to see kindness around here, son." "Thank you." From that day on, Marcus visited Grandma Lucy often. He enjoyed talking to her because she always had wise things to say. She told him stories of her younger days and all the struggles she had faced. She shared how tough it was to keep her store open, as many customers didn't have enough money to buy much. Marcus started buying small things from her store, even if he didn't need them, just to help out. Grandma Lucy grew fond of him, seeing him as a friend who genuinely cared about her. For Marcus, this friendship felt real, something he had been searching for all his life. One day, Marcus met another neighbor named Naomi, a single mother who lived with her young son, Jack. Naomi was always rushing, either going to work or coming back from her second job. She looked tired but never complained. Marcus learned that Naomi worked hard to provide for Jack and was doing her best to keep him happy. Naomi was hesitant to trust him at first, unsure why a stranger would be so friendly, but Marcus didn't push her. He just helped where he could, sometimes offering to watch Jack for a few minutes if she needed to run an errand. Jack was a lively boy who loved stories, and Marcus enjoyed spending time with him. They would play games, and Marcus would tell him funny stories that made him laugh. Slowly, Naomi began to trust Marcus, seeing that he was kind to her son and never asked for anything in return. Marcus saw how difficult Naomi's life was, juggling work, taking care of Jack, and paying bills. Watching her made him appreciate her strength. He admired her for her resilience, feeling more connected to her each day. Life in the neighborhood was tough, but Marcus noticed how people still managed to smile and support each other. He saw Grandma Lucy give away groceries on credit to families who couldn't afford to pay. He watched Naomi help other mothers by watching their kids when they had to work late. Everyone in the community was struggling, yet they cared for one another like a big family. For the first time, Marcus felt a sense of belonging, something he hadn't felt even in his big mansion surrounded by wealth. As time passed, Marcus realized he was becoming part of the neighborhood. People would nod at him on the street, and some even stopped to chat. They treated him like one of their own, never suspecting his true identity. The simplicity of their lives touched him deeply. He felt happy being Marcus Brown, an ordinary person who nobody expected anything from. He thought about his life as a billionaire and the fake friendships he used to have. Here, people liked him for who he was, not for what he could give them. And that was worth more than any amount of money. One evening, a notice was put up around the neighborhood. The landlord was raising the rent, and it was a price most people couldn't afford. Families worried they'd lose their homes, and some had already started packing. Marcus felt heartbroken seeing everyone so distressed. He wanted to help, but he couldn't reveal who he really was. He knew if people found out he was a billionaire, they'd see him differently. So he decided to keep quiet and do whatever he could to support his neighbors from behind the scenes. One day, Marcus overheard Naomi and Grandma Lucy talking about the rent problem. Naomi was on the verge of tears, worried about losing her home and having no place for Jack. Grandma Lucy tried to comfort her, but even she looked uncertain. Marcus knew this wasn't fair. These were good people who worked hard and deserved better. But he didn't know what he could do without giving himself away. He struggled with his decision, torn between wanting to help and needing to keep his secret safe. Determined to help without revealing his identity, Marcus found small ways to make a difference. He offered to pay for groceries at Grandma Lucy's store for families who couldn't afford it. He would slip money into people's mailboxes, hoping it would ease their burdens. People started calling it a miracle, not knowing where the help was coming from. Marcus felt happy knowing he was making a difference, even if no one knew it was him. But the rent problem wasn't going away. The landlord came around more often, reminding people they had to pay or leave. The neighborhood was full of worried faces, and even Grandma Lucy, who was always optimistic, looked defeated. Marcus realized he needed a bigger plan if he wanted to help them keep their homes. He was afraid of what might happen if he revealed his secret, but seeing the pain in his friend's eyes made him think it might be worth the risk. One day, Marcus decided to confront the landlord in person. He tried to reason with him, asking him to reconsider the rent increase. But the landlord only laughed, saying, "This is business, and if people can't pay, they have to leave." Marcus clenched his fists, feeling a mix of anger and helplessness. He wanted to shout that he was a billionaire and could buy the whole building, but he held back. He knew revealing his identity now might cause more harm than good. As he walked away from the landlord's office, Marcus felt torn. He wanted to help, but he didn't want his friends to think he had only been pretending to be one of them. He went back to his apartment, sitting in silence, wondering what he should do. He thought about the kindness he had seen in the neighborhood, the friends he had made, and how they had welcomed him. He knew he had to find a way to help them, no matter the cost. The next day, Marcus went to visit Grandma Lucy. She noticed the worry in his eyes and asked if he was okay. He didn't want to burden her with his thoughts, but he couldn't help but feel frustrated. He confessed, "I wish I could do more to help everyone here." Grandma Lucy, with her gentle smile, patted his hand and said, "Sometimes, just being there for each other is enough." Her words warmed his heart. She talked about how people in the neighborhood had always faced hard times, but had survived by leaning on one another. It reminded Marcus why he had come here, to find real connections, not just solve problems with money. Later that night, Marcus stayed awake, thinking of ways he could help without exposing himself. He realized that Grandma Lucy's advice was wise. Maybe the solution wasn't just money, but finding a way to unite the community. If he could rally everyone together, perhaps they could come up with a plan to confront the landlord as a team. Inspired, Marcus made a promise to himself. He would do everything he could to keep his friends safe without revealing his fortune. He felt a new surge of hope, ready to face the challenge ahead. Marcus began talking to his neighbors, encouraging them to share their worries and ideas. People opened up to him, expressing their fear of losing their homes, but also their love for the community. They all wanted to fight, but felt powerless alone. Slowly, Marcus helped them realize that together, they were stronger. He suggested they form a group to speak to the landlord as one voice. If enough people joined, maybe they could convince him to lower the rent increase or delay it for those struggling. At first, some were hesitant, unsure that a simple group of people could make a difference. But Marcus's determination was contagious. His belief in them made them believe in themselves. Naomi, Grandma Lucy, and others rallied behind him, and soon the whole neighborhood was coming together, sharing ideas and making plans. For Marcus, it was a beautiful sight. People uniting, supporting each other, and fighting for their homes. It was something he had never experienced in his old life as a billionaire. As the group grew stronger, they decided to confront the landlord together. They arranged a meeting and rehearsed what they would say. Marcus helped them prepare, but he stayed in the background, not wanting to draw too much attention to himself. He felt proud watching them stand tall and face the landlord with confidence. But when they presented their case, the landlord was dismissive, sneering at their efforts. He made it clear that he wasn't interested in helping them. Disheartened, the group left the meeting, feeling defeated. Marcus's heart ached for them, knowing that they had been brave to stand up for themselves. He wanted so badly to step in and fix everything with his wealth, but he knew it would shatter the trust they had built. Still, seeing their disappointment fueled his determination even more. Marcus decided that if he couldn't help openly, he would find a way to help from the shadows. He was about to become their secret benefactor. The next day, Marcus came up with a bold plan. He decided to quietly pay off the landlord to delay the rent increase, at least for a few months. This would buy the community some time to come up with a more permanent solution. He disguised himself as a regular investor and arranged a private meeting with the landlord, offering him a deal he couldn't refuse. The landlord, seeing the money, greedily accepted, agreeing to hold off on the rent increase. Word soon spread in the neighborhood that the landlord had mysteriously postponed the rent hike. People were overjoyed, calling it a miracle. Naomi, Grandma Lucy, and everyone else celebrated, feeling a new sense of hope. Marcus watched from the sidelines, smiling, grateful that he could make a difference without revealing his true self. He felt a warmth in his heart he hadn't felt in years, realizing that helping others brought him more happiness than any amount of money ever had. Over the next few weeks, Marcus continued to support his friends in secret. He anonymously donated small amounts to families who were struggling to pay for food and bills. He left groceries at doors, paid utility bills, and even arranged for surprise repairs on some of the old, broken-down apartments. People in the neighborhood were bewildered but grateful, wondering who their mysterious helper was. They called him the Miracle Man and shared stories of his kindness, even though no one knew his identity. For Marcus, it felt like a dream come true. He was finally able to help people genuinely, without the burden of his wealth or reputation hanging over him. The people saw him as a friend, not as a rich man. This freedom allowed him to be his true self. He felt lighter, happier, and more connected than ever before. His heart swelled with pride every time he saw the smiles his secret gifts brought to his friends' faces. But as happy as Marcus was, he knew the rent delay was only a temporary solution. One day, While visiting Grandma Lucy's store, he overheard her talking to Naomi about the uncertain future. "We're safe for now, but who knows what the landlord will do next," Grandma Lucy sighed. Marcus realized that the community needed something more permanent. He pondered how he could create lasting change without revealing his identity. That evening, Marcus had an idea. If he could somehow help the community buy the property, they wouldn't have to worry about the landlord anymore. It was a big idea, almost impossible, but he couldn't shake the thought. Maybe he could find a way to make it happen without anyone knowing it was him. The idea excited him and scared him at the same time, but he was determined to make it work. Marcus spent the following days meeting with a lawyer in secret, planning how he could buy the building under a fake name and then transfer ownership to the neighborhood residents. He carefully arranged everything, making sure no one would know he was behind it. This would give his friends control over their homes and protect them from future rent hikes. It was a complicated process, but Marcus was determined to see it through. Finally, the day arrived. Marcus quietly bought the building and set up a plan to pass ownership to a community trust, allowing the residents to manage it together. It was a huge step, but he was ready for it. When he told the lawyer to go ahead, he felt a surge of joy and relief. He had finally found a way to give his friends the security they deserved without sacrificing his secret. The neighborhood was shocked when the news came out. They had become the new owners of their building, thanks to an unknown benefactor who wanted to help them. People couldn't believe it, and there was an outpouring of joy and celebration. They no longer had to fear the landlord's threats, and they could make decisions for their community. Marcus watched the happiness spread, knowing he had done something meaningful without needing any recognition. Grandma Lucy and Naomi hugged each other, overjoyed. They couldn't stop talking about how blessed they felt to have been given such a gift. Marcus stood at a distance, smiling quietly to himself. This was exactly what he had hoped for. His heart was full, knowing he had made a difference in the lives of people who had become like family to him. For the first time in his life, he felt truly wealthy, not because of his money, but because of the love and gratitude he had received in return. As life settled down, Marcus continued living in the neighborhood, helping whenever he could. He didn't need recognition or thanks. He just wanted to be a part of the community he had come to love. He noticed how everyone took care of each other now, looking out for one another even more than before. People were kinder, stronger, and more united. It was like his secret gift had brought them closer together. But as much as he loved his new life, Marcus couldn't ignore the growing bond he felt with Naomi. They spent more time together, sharing laughs and stories, and he enjoyed helping her with Jack, who saw him as a friend. Marcus knew he had found something special with Naomi, but he worried about what she would think if she discovered his true identity. The thought of losing her trust kept him quiet, but his feelings grew with each passing day. One evening, Marcus and Naomi sat on the front steps of her apartment, watching the sunset. Jack had fallen asleep on Marcus's shoulder, and Naomi was grateful for the peace that Marcus brought to her life. They talked about their dreams and fears, and Marcus felt a surge of warmth for Naomi. He wanted to tell her the truth, that he was the one who had bought the building, that he was actually wealthy beyond her imagination, but he hesitated. He worried that revealing his secret would shatter the trust they had built. Instead, he just smiled, listening to her voice and cherishing the moment. Naomi looked at Marcus with a gentle smile, saying, "You've brought so much happiness to this neighborhood. I don't know what we would have done without you." Her words warmed his heart, but also made him feel guilty. He knew he hadn't been entirely honest with her, and that weighed on him more and more each day. But he kept his secret, hoping that he could continue being there for her and the community, just as he was. As the weeks passed, Marcus found himself more deeply embedded in the lives of his neighbors. He helped Grandma Lucy fix up her store, played games with the neighborhood kids, and even organized a small gathering for everyone. People loved him, and he felt truly at home for the first time in his life. Yet, the closer he grew to everyone, the heavier his secret felt. He knew that he couldn't keep it hidden forever, but he was afraid of what might happen if the truth came out. One day, as Marcus helped Naomi carry groceries into her apartment, she turned to him with a thoughtful look. "You know, you never talk about your past," she said gently. "Where did you come from before you moved here?" Marcus froze for a moment, caught off guard. He quickly tried to brush it off with a vague answer, but Naomi's curiosity lingered. She sensed there was more to him than he let on, and it made her wonder who he really was. The tension in his heart grew, knowing he might eventually have to reveal everything. One evening, Marcus overheard a group of residents discussing how the new ownership had changed their lives. They expressed their gratitude for the mystery benefactor who had saved their homes, and one of them joked, "If I ever meet this person, I'd give them the biggest hug of my life." Marcus felt a mix of pride and sadness. He wished he could stand among them as himself, receiving that gratitude openly. But he kept his distance, his secret creating a wall he couldn't break through. That night, Marcus lay in bed, struggling with his thoughts. He wondered if he had done the right thing by hiding his identity. What if his neighbors saw him differently, if they knew the truth? What if Naomi felt betrayed? But he couldn't deny the happiness he felt from knowing he had genuinely helped without expecting anything in return. It was the first time he truly understood the meaning of selflessness, and while it was bittersweet, he knew it had been worth it. Just when Marcus thought things were settling down, a sudden challenge shook the neighborhood. The landlord, bitter about losing his building, spread rumors that the new ownership was unstable and that everyone's homes could still be at risk. Fear rippled through the community, and people began to worry that their new sense of security might be an illusion. Marcus wanted to reassure them, but felt trapped by his secret. Seeing the fear on Naomi's face, Marcus felt an overwhelming urge to protect the community he had grown to love. He decided to meet with the landlord secretly, offering him more money to ensure he wouldn't cause trouble. The landlord accepted, but gave Marcus a stern warning. "Your secret won't stay safe forever. People will eventually know who you really are." Marcus left the meeting feeling unsettled, wondering if he could keep his secret much longer. Despite the landlord's threats, Marcus continued his efforts to bring peace to the neighborhood. He reassured Grandma Lucy and others that they were safe, even though he couldn't explain how he knew. The community trusted him, and that trust strengthened Marcus's resolve. However, the landlord's words continued to haunt him, reminding him that the truth could come out at any moment. He tried to push the thought aside, focusing instead on supporting his friends. One evening, Naomi invited Marcus over for dinner. As they ate, she shared stories of her dreams, her struggles as a single mother, and her fears for Jack's future. Marcus listened, his heart aching with admiration for her resilience. He wished he could tell her how much she meant to him and how much he wanted to be part of her life. But his secret held him back, making him feel like a stranger in his own story. He decided then that someday soon, he would have to tell her the truth. The very next day, Marcus's secret was put to the test. A reporter, curious about the mystery benefactor who had saved the building, started asking questions around the neighborhood. People speculated about who might be behind it, but no one suspected Marcus. He tried to avoid the reporter, fearing that any slip-up could lead to his exposure. But his avoidance only made the reporter more curious, sensing that Marcus might know something he wasn't saying. Naomi noticed Marcus's unease and asked if everything was okay. He tried to reassure her, but she could sense that something was troubling him. "You can trust me, Marcus," she said softly, reaching out to hold his hand. Her kindness and trust only deepened his guilt. He wanted to tell her everything, to finally be honest, but the fear of losing her and the community's respect kept him silent. The pressure weighed heavily on him, knowing he couldn't hide forever. As rumors swirled, Marcus decided to take a bold step. He wrote an anonymous letter to the community, explaining that the mystery benefactor was someone who cared deeply for them and wanted to see them thrive. In the letter, he promised that they were safe and that no harm would come to their homes. He left the letter in Grandma Lucy's store, where everyone could read it. People were touched by the words, feeling reassured by the benefactor's kindness and dedication. Naomi, reading the letter, felt a warmth in her heart. She turned to Marcus, saying, "I don't know who this person is, but they're truly special." Marcus smiled, relieved that his message had brought some comfort. But deep down, he knew that his secret was still a fragile one, and it was only a matter of time before the truth surfaced. The thought haunted him, but he pushed it aside, hoping that, for now, his small gesture was enough to keep his friends safe and happy. One evening, Marcus was sitting with Naomi and Grandma Lucy when Jack came running over, holding a small toy car. "Look, Marcus," he beamed, showing it proudly. Marcus laughed, ruffling Jack's hair, feeling the warmth of a family he'd always dreamed of. But in the middle of their laughter, the reporter from before appeared at the corner, observing them. Marcus's heart skipped a beat, realizing that his secret was closer to being exposed than ever. The reporter approached and began asking questions about the mystery benefactor. Marcus tried to remain calm, but the reporter's intense gaze made him nervous. "I'm just a regular guy," he replied, forcing a smile. Naomi and Grandma Lucy exchanged confused glances, sensing something was off. The reporter eventually left, but Marcus knew it was only a matter of time before the truth surfaced. He felt trapped, torn between his love for the community and the fear of losing everything. Days passed, and Marcus became more distant, afraid of drawing attention to himself. Naomi noticed his change in behavior and felt hurt, wondering if she had done something wrong. She missed the friend who had brought so much joy to her life and worried about the sadness she saw in his eyes. One day, she confronted him, asking why he had been avoiding her. Her voice was filled with concern, and Marcus felt his resolve crumble. He took a deep breath, realizing he couldn't keep lying. "There's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice shaking. But before he could explain, Jack tugged at his arm, interrupting the moment. Marcus's heart pounded as he looked into Naomi's eyes, seeing the trust and warmth there. He knew he would have to tell her the truth soon, but for now, he simply promised, "One day, I'll explain everything." Naomi nodded, though the uncertainty lingered between them. The following week, Naomi decided to give Marcus the space he seemed to need, though her heart ached with worry and confusion. She missed the friend who had become such a constant in her life, but she sensed that something bigger was weighing on him. Marcus, meanwhile, struggled with guilt and anxiety, knowing that he was hurting someone he deeply cared about by keeping her in the dark. He spent more time alone, wandering the neighborhood, thinking about how much his life had changed since meeting Naomi, Jack, and the other residents. One evening, As Marcus was walking back to his apartment, he ran into the same reporter again. The reporter, who had grown suspicious, bluntly confronted him. "I have reason to believe you're connected to the mystery benefactor." Cared to comment? Marcus felt trapped. He wanted to deny it, but the reporter's determined gaze made him pause. He simply replied, "I'm just here to help however I can," before quickly walking away. But he knew he couldn't run forever. Sooner or later, the truth would have to come out. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, haunted by the idea of losing the community he'd grown to love. Finally, he decided it was time to come clean. He wrote a letter explaining everything: his wealth, his decision to buy the building, and his reasons for keeping it a secret. He poured his heart into the letter, hoping it would convey his genuine intentions. The next morning, he left it on Naomi's doorstep, then walked away, unsure if he would ever be able to return. Later that day, Naomi found the letter. As she read Marcus's words, her hands trembled. She couldn't believe what she was reading. The man who had become such a close friend had been hiding such a massive truth. Part of her felt betrayed, but another part understood his reasons. She sat on her front steps, reading the letter over and over, feeling a mix of hurt, confusion, and a strange sense of admiration. She knew she had to talk to him, but she wasn't sure what she would say. Naomi spent the day in deep thought, replaying moments she had shared with Marcus and looking at them through this new lens of understanding. As evening fell, she made her way to his apartment, determined to confront him. Marcus opened the door, his face filled with worry and vulnerability. Before he could say anything, Naomi held up the letter. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked softly, her voice a mix of hurt and compassion. Marcus took a deep breath and explained everything: how he had come from a life of privilege but had felt empty, how he'd wanted to do something meaningful without people judging him for his money. He admitted that he feared people would only see him as a wealthy outsider. Naomi listened, her heart softening as she realized how much thought and care he had put into his actions. When he finished, she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Thank you for finally telling me the truth. But remember, you're more than just your wealth to us," she said with a kind smile. Word about Marcus's true identity quickly spread through the neighborhood. Some people felt shocked, others betrayed, but most were simply grateful. They realized that, despite his wealth, Marcus had never flaunted it or used it to separate himself from them. Instead, he had become one of them, sharing in their struggles and joys. Grandma Lucy was the first to approach him, giving him a warm hug and saying, "You're one of us, rich or not. That's what matters." As the days passed, the community began to accept Marcus's truth. They saw that his intentions were sincere and that his heart was in the right place. People started treating him the same as they always had, seeing him not as a wealthy benefactor, but as a friend and neighbor. Marcus felt a weight lifted from his shoulders, finally able to be himself without hiding. For the first time, he felt completely at peace, surrounded by people who accepted him for who he truly was. With his secret out in the open, Marcus and Naomi's friendship grew stronger than ever. She and Jack became like family to him, and the neighborhood thrived with his continued support. But now, Marcus didn't feel the need to hide or pretend. He was free to help and give openly, and the community embraced him with open arms, grateful for his generosity and kindness. Marcus had found a home among them, not because of his wealth, but because of the love and trust they shared. Looking back, Marcus realized that the greatest gift he had received was not the satisfaction of helping others, but the sense of belonging and friendship he had found. He understood that true happiness came from being part of something bigger than himself, a community built on trust and kindness. And as he looked at Naomi, Jack, and his neighbors, he knew that he had finally found a place where he truly belonged. The moral of the story was clear. Wealth alone doesn't bring happiness, but genuine relationships and kindness make life rich beyond measure.